¡Quítese a la verga!
Isaiah chapter 58 and verse 1. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins.
Copyright disclaimer. This content does not belong to Bible Chronicles or claim this intellectual property. The content provided today has and always will belong to the content owner. Bible Chronicles does not have any affiliation with the owner of this property. As mentioned, Bible Chronicles did not intend to make use of any material for the purpose of harvesting gain. However, Title 17 of United States copyright law states material in use can only be done when it's for theological or general educational purposes, and thus Bible Chronicles believes that this principal material falls under fair use, which honors protection under Section 107 of the same U.S. copyright law.
Del mar los vieron llegar, mis hermanos emplumados serán los hombres barbados de la profecía esperada. Se oyó la voz del monarca de que el Dios había llegado y les abrimos la puerta. Por temor a lo ignorado, iban montados en bestias, como demonios del mal, iban con fuego en las manos y cubiertos de metal. Solo el valor de unos cuantos les opuso resistencia, y al mirar correr la sangre se llenaron de vergüenza, porque los dioses ni comen ni gozan con lo robado. Y cuando nos dimos cuenta, ya todo estaba acabado, y en ese error entregamos la grandeza del pasado, y en ese error nos quedamos 300 años esclavos. Se nos quedó el maleficio de brindar al extranjero nuestra fe, nuestra cultura, nuestro pan, nuestro dinero, y le seguimos cambiando oro por cuentas de vidrio, y damos nuestras riquezas por sus espejos con brillo. Siglo XX nos siguen llegando rubios y les abrimos la casa y los llamamos amigos, pero si llega cansado un indio de andar la sierra, lo humillamos y lo lo vemos como extraño por su tierra. Tú, hipócrita que te muestras humilde ante el extranjero, pero te vuelves soberbio con tus hermanos del pueblo. Oh, maldición de Malinche, enfermedad del presente, ¿cuándo dejarás mi tierra? ¿Cuándo harás libre a mi gente?
El autor viene a decirnos con mucha firmeza y gran convencimiento lo mismo que nos decía en el siglo XVIII el barón de Holbach, ¿no? Un filósofo francés de origen alemán. Si nos remontamos al comienzo, entonces hallaremos que la ignorancia y el temor crearon a los dioses. La fantasía, el entusiasmo o el engaño los adornaron o desfiguraron. La debilidad les rinde culto, la credulidad los conserva, la costumbre los respeta y la tiranía los apoya para que la ceguera de los hombres sirva a sus propios intereses.
All right, I think we did. Yeah. All right, fam. Okay. Yesterday we had a more of a critiquing video live. ETC came on for the first time, and Brother Sonny came on too for the first time on the channel. We were kind of ending it at that moment. I wanted to finish the video, so I wish I would have stayed longer, man. It's just, you know, I honestly, I didn't expect really nobody to jump on, to be honest. But it's all good, man. You know, I'm going to do it again. Anyways, today, I want to touch on this because I didn't get to touch on it before, even though I had done the first video. But I honestly, it was so many notes. I wanted to get the first part in. Okay. So Christopher CULON was a Jew. How do we prove that? How do we know that? Right? You can just say it. Is it true? So we're going to go through some books as much as we can. I'm going to go fast because I don't really want to be on all night. My daughter has a game tomorrow and I want to be ready for it. The secret relationship between blacks and Jews.
A ver, que alguien me explique.
You have to find it extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. The connection that these two people have. Now, again, so-called, right? Just keep that in mind. So-called. Why is that? Why do I say so-called? Well, because honestly, you guys have seen the video where I was showing you about their, what's his name? That Bishop Matthew, Rabbi Matthew, right? Rabbi Matthew. He was doing incantations. This is a so-called Negro Hebrew who, you know, obviously all this BHI shit came from. Anyways, so let's get into it. All right, volume 1. We're going to just kind of read the highlighted sections and we're going to move on. All right, so there's a lot of history that's been secluded and or at least given to us in pieces, which I don't think it's fair. So let's get through it. It says, throughout the history of practice, Jews have been involved in the purchase and sales of human beings. This fact is confirmed by their own scholars and historians. In his book, A History of the Jews, Solomon Grazel states that Jews were among the most important slave dealers. Yeah, going all the way back through when Jews were also. So these people pretty much have any denomination. There could be Jewish Spaniards, Jewish Portuguese, Jewish Gringolandians from Britain, right? Do you understand what's going on? However, predominantly, they're looking white. And they say they're from the Middle East. I don't know. In 1460, when Jews were the masters of nautical science in Portugal, that nation was importing 700 to 800 slaves yearly. You think they were just from Africa? No, of course not. That's why there's a country that has a Christmas history about Santa Claus, and they call it Zwarte. Well, it's regarding also Zwarte Piet. So they, I believe it's the Dutch, they consider Zwarte Piet as the helper of, you know, this Santa Claus. And Zwarte Piet, and then these Dutch tell their kids, you better, you know, be a good kid, or Zwarte Piet is gonna snatch you and take you back to Spain. I really don't know why there's such a line between Spain and Portugal. They're literally the same country. You see them play, and it's like they're the same team. Anyways, right? And this is why when 1492 occurred, you have to understand the marriage between Ferdinand and Isabella. And we're going to get to see some history regarding them as well, saying, wait a minute, hold on a second. If you Jews supposedly were expelled, then how come you were so part of a major, you were part of the cabinet that really, you know, was part of the kingship? So it's like, and then you funded the slave trips to our lands. It wouldn't have happened without Jewish money. So the success of these medieval merchants was enhanced by the supreme linguistic ability. So these people spoke Arabic or Aramaic, Persian, or, you know, right, Roman, Frankish, Spanish, Slavic, and displayed a business acumen far in advance of the times. Jews' participation in slave trade, particularly their trafficking in non-Jewish slaves, incited the moral indignation of Europe's Gentile population. As you know, they, you know, practice the scriptures, so, you know, you motherfuckers are slaves to them. You know, I guess they call you goyim. Columbus Jews and the slave trade. Not Jews, but Jews were the real financial basis for the first expedition of CULON. On August 2nd, 1492, more than 300 so-called Jews were expelled, supposedly, from Spain, ending their 5th-century involvement in the black hostage trade in that region, which is kind of funny how they put it that way, because black people, they also own slaves. It's just so fucking funny, bro. We're in a pothole of bullshit in this northern part of the Americas. In North America, predominantly United States of America, right? That's where we get the bullshit potluck. Everybody's hiding from their history. Nobody wants to admit that they ever fucking owned slaves. Became quite prominent within Spain's hierarchy. Now, we read the other day that, there was a lot of Africans who helped the Spaniards hold dependent. So every ape rap, slaughter, murder of our people, they had a sidekick like Swarte Pete right there and then. Now, see, this is a history that nobody tells you because it's embarrassing to you, to them, and to the white man. It's embarrassing to you Hispanics because you don't want to even hear the fact that it was Morenos that kicked your ass too. And then the white man don't want to hear that. The white man don't want to hear like, oh, we had help from them. They don't want to hear that. And then the black man don't want to hear that they actually did have an advantage. So reparations can be...
Que alguien me explique.
This, like what we call it. That's just bullshit. They all had advantages. The Marranos, the secret Jews. Marranos were also of Muslim, or is like Middle East. Most of them, or at least from what I understand, had Arabic bloodline. Were those compulsory converted Jews and their descendants who outwardly became Christians but secretly continued to meet in the synagogue, celebrated feast days, and observed Jewish Sabbath. They're Marranos, and there was another name for them. The name Marrano may be derived from the old Castilian marrano swine, or perhaps from the Arabic word marran, forbidden. And in case you guys don't know, there's a lot of Spanish words that are actually Arabic, like camisa, camiseta. That's an Arabic word. There's a lot of Arabic influence in Spain. In 1350, Spain began a series of conversion drives to convert all Jews in Spain in Christianity. Okay, you see that stuff, right? All right. We see the same applied to the Muslims who were expelled in like manner in greater numbers than Jews. So Muslims were also expelled. But you don't hear them talk about that, do they? Do you? Right? No, that's never mentioned. Some 50,000 Jews chose to convert rather than leave their land and their riches. I mean, they became Christians, but secretly practicing this shit. That's why you hear about that blood libel and all that stuff, right? Contrary to popular notion, those who left were not refugees searching for religious freedom, but entrepreneurs looking for economic opportunity. What a coincidence.
That's right.
Oh, that's gotta hurt!
Now we see here, contrary to popular notion, those who left were not refugees searching. Oh, sorry, we just read that, right? When they fled, they brought few Torah scrolls and even fewer copies of Jewish holy book Talmud with them. When asked what he thought most Marranos knew of Judaism after their flight from Spain and Portugal, Roth answered one word: nothing, which is very true. There's a book that I have. Let me see. The book is called, I don't think I want to read it right now because it's a couple of pages. And it's just basically saying that these people had no history of who the fuck they were. Okay. The book is called A New Voyage to Italy. And I believe the page is page 42, if I'm not mistaken. Second chapter, page 42. And it starts talking about this Christian dude that goes around and trying to figure out like who are these so-called Jews, right? And he's asking him, hey, can you pronounce this word in Arab, in Hebrew, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And that dude, it's just like, bro, now that you got me involved in this research, he sends a letter back to his, guy that paid for him to go through this, right? He's like, now that you got me doing this research shit, I'm more motivated to find out than you are now. As a matter of fact, what I find is just fucking miserable shit. These guys have no way to pronounce the words. One guy says it one way in one area, the other guy says it one way in the other area. They have no knowledge history of themselves. Matter of fact, dude, there's nothing these fucking so-called Jews can prove that they are even those people. Nothing. They cannot prove nothing. Then he says, on contrary to the fact, they are so stubborn, so hard-headed, so fucking caught in their own bullshit that they would go around and treat everybody like crap, thinking that shit is real. And what do we have here in America? North America. We got Negros saying that they're Hebrews, making other people kiss their boots. We got these other ones saying that they're supposedly Hebrews, killing kids in Gaza. Right? It says the day after the Spanish expulsion, Christopher Columbus, whose actual name was Cristobal Colon, took a group of Jewish refugees with him to the New World. What a coincidence. Queen Isabella signed an expulsion decree, and Columbus' boys' orders the very same day. Now, here, keep this in mind that Queen Isabella actually had so-called Jewish bloodline through her mother. Sorry, through her family. I know that. And Ferdinand's mom for sure was a Jew, so-called, which is Portuguese, right? See, these are the things that you guys don't even know. They just like, 1492, they came here. Oh my God, they realized this. Fuck no, they didn't do none of that shit. They know exactly who you guys were. They know exactly who you were. Queen Isabella signed the expulsion decree. Okay, but it was not the queen or the king who founded the voyage. George Cohen, among many Jewish historians, proclaims that wealthy Jews, so-called, financed the expedition of Coulon, and adds that the story of Isabella's jewels is not founded on fact, but rather it was the invention intended to glorify the queen. So here we actually see these guys, Cabrero, Santagal, invested 17 ducats, which would be well over 100,000 today, right? 6 prominent Jews accompanied Columbus or Coulon, including Bernal, the physician, Marco, the surgeon, Sanchez, the inspector, Luis de Torres, an interpreter and sailor, Alfonso de Calle, and Rodrigo Triana, who is claimed to be the first white man ever to see the world. So keep this in mind. These are Spaniards, so-called, Jews, so-called, living in Spain, saying that Triana, not them, they're Europeans, remember, that Triana is the first white man to ever see the New World. So what does it say about these Jews? These guys were people of color, not African, so-called, people of color like us, brownish, these so-called Sephardic Jews. Okay? So when we hear the so-called celebration that's coming around the corner, I believe they're going to celebrate this shit pretty soon, right? When is the, hold on a second. When is it? Christopher Columbus Day? Yeah, October 12th. It's coming up in 2 months. So when they celebrate this shit, you have to understand why now there's a deep connection between these people pushing the flag, the red, white, and blue, and the white and blue flag with a star with 6 points. You have to wonder why their devotion to each other when their hate is obvious, Christian and Jewish Zionist. This was a joint venture. Coulon, boss. Coulon. Hold on. Cecil Roth, History of the Marrano. The connection between the Jews and the discovery of America was not, however, merely a question of fortuitous coincidence. The epoch-making expedition of 1492 was a matter of fact, very largely a Jewish, rather a Marrano enterprise. Remember, keep in mind that other book I told you that I finally translated. I'm going to show it to you today. And it shows that these guys knew exactly what they were doing. They knew who was here. They funded the trip because they knew that we were here. They knew that there were Hebrews here already. Do you understand that? That's why they have other books that I share that I follow up with you and to prove to you, bro, they talk to us in Hebrew. But you see, when you want to be supposedly smarter than the average Joe, you're not willing to even pick up even the pieces of the actual puzzle. No, you're still surrounded by your scholarly fucking degrees that the white man gave you. You're still thinking you're better than the white man under the education of the white man. He's providing you what you need to learn. He ain't gonna let you in the secret fucking doors. Columbus the Jew, after a few scholars, including Roth, presents strong evidence that Coulon was himself a who. He hid his Jewishness, they say, because no Spanish Jew could ever have expected aid from the Queen of Spain. Or so the explorer claimed to be an Italian Catholic. Sorry, I'm trying to fix this. Tina Levitan, author of The Jewish in America's Life, found the first set reference of Columbus' Jewishness in print in a diplomatic document, right? She says, revealed, because it says, from him we learned that Cristobal Coulon, who never called himself that Christopher Columbus and never spoke or wrote Italian, was the son of Susana Fontana Rosa, right? But in Spain, where there were those bearing such surnames were Jews, some of whom had been brought before the Spanish Inquisition, right? Letters were written by him to strangers, have the customary X on the top to indicate the faith of the writer, but the 13th letter written to his son only bears an X. And that letter was meant to be shown to the King of Spain. So now here we see also, right, in the Jews in America, their contribution to the United States of America, right? They cite Ferdinand, Columbus' son, writes that his father's progenitors were of blood royal of Jerusalem.
A ver, que alguien me explique.
I got another book in Spanish that'll confirm that as well. It says here that Columbus' words, for when all is done, David, that most prudent king, was first a shepherd and afterwards chosen king of Jerusalem. I am a servant of that same Lord who raised him to such dignity. When Jewish author insists all existing portraits of the discoverer gave him a Jewish cast of countenance, so they say. Right? His lineage also points to his Jewish roots. His mother's maiden name was Susana Fontana Rosa, daughter of Jacob, granddaughter of Abraham, and a Jewess. His father, Domingo Culon, was a map seller. Did not Columbus write, the king of Spain, that his ancestors were interested in maps? Once again, Columbus, a slave dealing Jew. Columbus was an experienced sailor long before his famous voyage went. Sir Arthur Helps writes that in the course of his letters, Columbus speaks after the fashion of the practiced slave dealer. In fact, in 1498, his first 5 expeditions brought 600 Indians to Spain as slaves. Matter of fact, he brought more. 200 were given to the masters of ships, 400 sold in Spain, and then the ones that didn't make it were thrown overboard. You know, like the movie Amistad, you're thrown overboard. That should happen to you. That happened to you before it happened to anybody else. I'm pretty sure it happened. Actually, you know what? I lied. You have slave trading on boats, so that means they were fucking tossing everybody overboard, bro. But here in the Americas, right, we were the first people to have any kind of connection with those other continents over there where we experienced being thrown over the ships, thrown overboard. You were still alive. You were just sick. You know, they considered you weak. Columbus employed a slave labor in gold mining even before sailing for the New World. So we see here an actual account of, you know, some Jewishness. Right? Now, here's the book in Spanish that I told you to confirm that, and I'm going to read it to you in Spanish. So for you guys that don't speak Spanish, aguántense, güeyes. We speak Spanish in this channel. Let's see, hold on a second. The book is called Colección de Libros Raros y Curiosos que Tratan de América, Tomo Quinto. Hold on, I know the title is different. Historia del almirante Don Cristóbal Colón, en la cual se da particular y verdadera relación de su vida y de sus hechos y del descubrimiento de las Indias occidentales llamadas el Nuevo Mundo. All right, we're not going to go too very far. We're just going to read a little bit real quick, and then that's, you know, we move on, all right? So just in case. So in case you guys don't understand this part, we'll just hang in there. It won't take too long in Spanish. But this is important because we have to confirm it, okay? We just read supposedly that his son confirmed that he came from royalty. The Chodes. He was part of the Chodes. Let's see, this is fucking funny, man. It's fucking funny, these people, dog. All right, let's see. All right, it says here, hold on, let me go back. Okay, do I have it here? What the fuck? Oh, no, it's next page. My bad. Moving right along. All right, it says here, okay? It says, I'm going to start right here. Okay, here it goes. Pero yo me excusé de estos afanes, creyendo que el almirante fue elegido por nuestro Señor para una cosa tan grande como la que hizo, y porque había de ser verdadero apóstol. Como lo fue, en efecto, quiso que en este caso imitase o imitara a los otros, a los cuales para publicar su nombre eligió en las orillas del mar y no en los palacios y en las grandezas. Aunque dice, aunque imitase al mismo Cristo, que siendo sus ascendientes de la real sangre de Jerusalén, fue su voluntad que sus padres fuesen menos conocidos. So here he's basically saying, confirming that Christopher Columbus supposedly comes from the same lineage as Jesus. That's what we're reading. I'm not making it up. That's called the, by the way, I read it already to you, right? Yes, I did read it to you. The previous book was called Secret Relations Between the Blacks and the Jews. Now, this is the one that I've been talking to you about for quite some time, and I know that you guys probably forgot about it all and shit, right? But here we see an actual, hold on a second. How much time do I got? Okay, cool. We got a little bit. I'm almost done. Damn, bro, y'all left? Fuck. Okay, fuck it. Whatever, dog. Give a shit. It's called Shlomo Sands and the Invention of the Jewish People. Hey, man, I only do these classes for those that care. I guess that's the way it is. Some things will never change. Yeah, I feel bad for you guys. All right, so in this book, Shlomo Sand debunks these so-called, proves, let me just rephrase it, that these so-called Sephardic Jews or these so-called Ashkenazi Jews are all converts. That's what Shlomo Sand is basically saying. Okay? We're going to start on page 200. We're just going to read some of the highlighted parts from page 2 to maybe page 6. And then we're going to jump real quick to page 20 and on, because here he's proving that most of those Sephardic Jews are converts. Also, those North African Jews are converts. And he shows why. Then he also explains Khazars conversions, also so-called, or better known as Ashkenazis conversions. This is Shlomo Sand, the invention of the Jewish people. This is who they are. This is his people. No one else's. It says the successful spread of Judaism in Maghreb was probably due to the presence of a Phoenician population in the region. So we see Phoenician. You look, you do some digging, you'll find out that's a Hamitic line. Okay. Now we see here where then did all the Punic / the African Phoenicians who populated the coastline go, right? So then it says there that several historians, notably the French Marcel Simon, have suggested that a large number of them became Jews, according to the distinctive strength of Judaism throughout North America. Then it says it is not beyond reason to assume that the close resemblance of the language of the Old Testament to the ancient Phoenicians, as well as the fact that some of the Punics were circumcised, helped promote mass conversion to Judaism. For example, North Africa was one of the outstanding successes in the history of proselytization in the Mediterranean region. Although in the 3rd and 4th century, meaning, common era after your so-called Jesus, as noted in the previous chapters, the rate of conversion to Judaism slowed down in Egypt. Okay, so here we see that there are some conversions going on right now. North Africans, Judaism, you get what I'm saying? Judaizing, conversion. These are not blood-related Israelites. In North Africa, as well as many of the Judaizers, reminded in a state of in a semi-conversion, or as they would later be known, heaven worshippers. The New Testament mentions God-fearers, Jews, and proselytes coming to Jerusalem from the parts of Libya about Cyrene, right? So we see a lot of this conversion. Right, two of the leading thinkers of early Christianity, Tertullian and later Augustine, were born in Africa. So you see what I mean? So these people that supposedly live here in our continent right now, claiming to be Hebrews, supposedly that they're the people that were enslaved by the white man, that they're saying that they never knew Christianity prior to that. But here we see, historically speaking, that they've had Christianity known in Africa for a fucking long time. Scripture will say that in Deuteronomy 28, the Israelites would not know who the fuck these people were that enslaved their ass. Neither would they have known that religion. Meaning, I wouldn't know what the fuck Christianity was. And guess what? We're the only people in the entire world that did not know what Christianity was until 1492. The former was especially concerned about the strength of Judaism in his native city of Carthage. Once again, local religious cultures were what again? His sharp attacks against proselytes to also testify to the popular appeal of this movement. So it was a movement to adjudicate a bunch of fucking people, kind of like they were trying to do with a lot of other Christians, right? So to speak. Right? We see that there's evidence that Christianity struggled against the Jewish presence, right? They were heaven worshippers, probably an immediate Jewish Christian sect. In his work, Instructions Commodianus, whose exact dates are not known, attacks the numerous proselyte and mocks their switching and changing of religions and the blatant inconsistencies of their worship.
A ver, que alguien me explique.
Blatant inconsistencies.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
Wow. The advance of the church was temporarily halted by the Vandal conquest. These Vandals are Europeans. These Germanic tribes from Europe dominated North Africa between 430 Common Era and 553 Common Era. Excuse me. The scriptures say that the Israelites, when they get invaded like that, right? This is like, yet you know your fathers have known. A religion that you and your fathers have not known. Black and white folks been knowing each other. How the fuck do you think you're the Hebrews? You're worse than the Khazars. Shit, they don't even bring Deuteronomy 28 at all. They don't even want to talk about it. They don't even want to fucking mention it. It says where they established an Aryan Christian kingdom. So there was Christians in Africa in 400, 500. After Constantine invented the religious, theatrics of Christianity, or Catholicism, you should say. They went right to Africa. How the fuck you guys trying to say that you don't know these people? Then the Bible says that you wouldn't know the language. No, nothing like that. Well, you know their fucking language. I'm sorry. You need to put you need to shut down your buildings. You need to stop giving these people that false, stupid hope. You're lying to them. Some of them may really want to repent, and you're lying to them. It is quite likely that following this conquest, some of the coastal Jews, those former Punic, fled inland and other moved further west. Here begins the amazing story of a new wave of Judaization, basically conversion. Here goes here one example. As Ibn Khaldun, the great 14th century Arab historian, wrote, possibly some of the Berbers practiced Judaism, North Africans, which they had received from their powerful Israelite neighbors in Syria. Oh, shit.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
Hey, Nate the Snake, answer. How do you work this one out? What lie are you gonna come up to the Jerry Crow you wearing? Among the Jewish Berbers were I don't know how to say that, who inlaid the tribe of Kahina, who was killed by the Arabs in their first conquest. All the Jewish tribes were the Neofuko of the African Berbers, the Fendulaua, the Mediun, the Belualu, the Gyata, and the Berbers of the extreme Maghreb, the Fazaz, Idris, the first of the Beni, El-Hassan, son of El-Hassan, who reached Maghreb, wiped out all traces of the religion that persisted in his territory and crushed independence of tribes. So we see a serious, honest, plain, clear conversion. So when these people say that supposedly Africans were Israelites and that's why, you obviously don't read history. Ibn Khaldun apparently assumed that at least some of the Berbers, North African longtime inhabitants, were descendants of the ancient Phoenicians or some other Canaanite population that originated in the vicinity of Syria and converted to Judaism. You see this? Elsewhere, he speaks of the Hamorite origin of some of the Berbers. The Judaic tribes he lists were large, powerful, and spread across North Africa. See? Many cultural practices, not only the amulets coming among the Berbers are also found in the religious rites of the Jews of North Africa. They're also found in the Khazars. They love that shit. They fucking draw stuff in their hands too. They believe in incantations, honestly. Where the Judaic Berbers, as well as their proselyte Punic predecessors, and a handful of immigrant Judeans, the ancestors of the Jews of North Africa. Moreover, to what extent did this great wave of Berber Judaization augment the number of Jews in Spain during and after the conquest of Abraham. So that's what he's talking about. So like, if all these people were converted Jews, right, then maybe that's why it makes sense that there were so many so-called Jews in Spain and in Portugal and in the Mediterranean, because it only makes sense if they're really, really Hebrews, like Israelites. Why didn't they just go to Jerusalem? Spain, Portugal, they were in power. They had expelled the original Vandals and Goths from those regions, right? They ruled for almost 700 years. Why didn't they ever take back Jerusalem? No, because it makes perfect sense. That's basically what he's referring to. That's what he's leading into, right? And if you keep reading this book, this is page 3, right? You'll start seeing like it's all conversions. Okay, this is not me making shit up. This is conversions. These are people that are not Israelites. They're not hereditary to the actual bloodline. They're no different than the Khazars. It says here, look, I'll show you. Probably this is page 205, yeah. Hirschberg, a far more cautious and reliable historian than Scholz, was the second scholar to deal with the Judaized Berbers and their queen Kahina. It says here that the obscurity of the history of the most communities in the interior of the first half of the second millennium, a certain background of these theses that the great majority of Maghreb Jews are of Berber stock. You see? So these Jews are not Israelites. Blood. They have no relation to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The position with regards to the source is different here than in the case of Haimar Judaizers in South Arabia or the Khazars on the banks of the Volga. Shit. Now that we're on that topic, because I think I've shown enough in regards to like, you know, the whole fucking Sephardic bullshit, you know. That's why when that idiot tried to say that Sephardics were our people, I was like, bro, get the fuck out of here with that shit, dude. Do you even know the history about these people? Like, do you understand exactly what you're saying? You know, like for real? Nah, man. But, you know, sometimes people don't want to learn or listen or say, you know, maybe I may be wrong. Like, see that history, 7-11, you know, all that stuff, right? So let's go to page. Here it goes right here. Where are you at? Oh, no. We're going to go to page 20. Here's where he starts talking about the Khazars. I passed it. Okay, on to page 20. Okay, where you want? There we go. All right, let me see. Page 19, 219. We'll do start here. There it goes. I think it's 219. Hold on, let me just make sure. Okay, here it goes on the bottom. All right, then it says here, this is again, Shlomo Sands, the invention of the Jews. This is a so-called Jewish person exposing himself, basically admitting it. They're only Jewish by name. That's what it sounds like to me. You know what I'm saying? It says here, one of the few surviving testimonies left by the Khazars themselves is the important document known to the scholars as the Cambridge document. Its originality is less disputed than that of the King Joseph's letter. This Hebrew manuscript, written by a Jewish Khazar from the court of King Joseph, was found in the famous Cairo Geniza, published in 1912, right? Been kept away, blah, blah, blah. It says here in the letters, our ancestors fled from them, for they could not bear the yoke of the worshippers of idols. And the princes of Khazaria received them, for the men of Khazaria were the first without the Torah. And they too remained without the Torah and scriptures and made marriage with the inhabitants of the land and mingled with them. And they learned their deeds and went out with them to war continually. And they became one people. Only upon the covenant of circumcision they relied. So there's a lot of Armenians that became Khazars, or, you know, vice versa. That's why they kind of look like that shit. And of some of them observed the Sabbath. All right. It says here that there was no king in the land of Khazaria, only him who won victories in the battle. They would appoint over them as the general of the army. Now, it happened at one time when the Jews went forth into battle with them as was their wont on that day. A Jew proved mighty with his sword and put to flight the enemy who came against Khazaria. See this? The documents also describe a tripartite brainstorming encounter between a Muslim and a Christian and a Jew. Similar and in essentials to the description of the King Joseph letter, and concluded, of course, with the appropriate decision in favor of Judaism. So basically saying like these guys were trying to figure out like what religion they need to turn into, because apparently they had to choose one: Christianity, Judaism, or Muslim, right? Or Islam, I believe. Well, they chose Jews. So it says here, a contemporary Arab writer also describes the Judaization of the king of Khazaria, following an intense theological debate, except that in his text, the Jewish scholar hired an assassin to poison the Muslim scholar before the decisive confrontation, and in that way, the Jew turned the king to his religion and converted him, supposedly. It keeps going. There's more. However, stories about migration as a catalyst in the process of proselytization seem much more relevant to the understanding of Khazar history.
¡Viva México!
Wrong one.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
The arrival of Jewish believers from Armenia, from Iraq, from Khorasan, which converted part of modern-day Iran, right? All of these people, right? Proselytization as well. This doesn't mean that they were all Jews. The Khazar Hebrew testimony about Jewish immigration finds support in Arabic literature, right? So we see here for the Jews, they are the kings in his court, and the Khazars his people. The Judaization of the king of the Khazars took place in the caliphate of Harun al-Rashid. These are converts, not the real Jews. I'm not just saying this, I'm reading it and sharing it with you. You know, you decide if it's correct or not. It says here, if in the 19th century scholars were doubtful about the conversion of the Khazar kingdom, today it is not in dispute. The spreading monotheism reached the Caucasus and the steeps of Volga and the Don, today's southern Russia, and convinced rulers and tribal elites to believe in the many advantages of the single deity. So that's why you see Polish, Ukrainians, Russians, right? Germans, all of them claiming to be Jews now, Ashkenazis, because their mama said so. Because they wear the little shit in their hair, the little hats. The question remains, why did Khazaria opt for Judaism rather than the other monotheistic religions with their less numerous requirements? Well, because then they would be, what? Chosen people of God? Maybe. They knew that they could turn this into something else? Possibly. Think about this for a moment. Had the Khazars opted for Islam, for example, they would have became the subject of the Caliph. And had they remained pagan, they would have been marked for annihilation by the Muslims, who did not tolerate idolatry. Christianity, of course, would have subordinated them to the Eastern Empire for a long time. It says a slow and gradual transition from the ancient shamanism, which is what they believed in, of the region's Jewish monotheism, probably also contributed to the consolidation and centralization of Khazar realm. One leading collector of material about the Khazars was a Karaite Russian named Abram Ferkovich. This tireless researcher was also very devout, anxious to create the impression that Khazaria had converted not by the rabbinical Judaism, but by Quranism. He added and deleted material in various documents, sacred books, and tomb inscriptions. As you can see, a closer investigation revealed that the Khazar Judaism was not at all Karaite. Moreover, at the time of the Khazar conversion, copies of the Talmud were still in rarity, which enabled many proselytes to take up ancient rites, even proselyte sacrifices. Shit.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
Why do you think now they do really weird stuff? You guys can pick up the book. It's called The Invention of the Jews. It's not expensive. But you can download it on your own too with PDF. And you can read some of this shit yourself. It is almost certain that the Khazar power sheltered Jews, Muslims, Christians, and pagans, and that synagogues, mosques, and churches existed side by side in the cities. There are Muslims living there who have mosques in the place, and then the Christians have churches and the Jews synagogues. Funny how the Khazars now want to kill Ghazians, right? And claiming that they're the people of the Bible when clearly they're not. Clearly. It's a despicable nation of people. And, you know, they're not far from being Germans or Russians. Look, in later times, these names migrated westward to Russia, Poland, and even Germany. Russia, Poland, Germany, Ukraine, all of that region. It shouldn't be a surprise. But, for many of you, it is. What time is it? Oh, cool. Sounds good. All right. So let me show this to y'all. Because we still got a lot to go through. We still have a lot to go through. And hold on a second. Is that it? Hold on, let me see if I can pull up the page here. Hold on. Well, let's see. I have it on this page. Okay. All right. So this is I want to share this with y'all because I think it's important, and you decide what to get out of it. Okay. Hold on. Let me get out of it and let me read it to you. This is image 1 of Port Tobacco Times, Charles County Advertisers, right? April 3rd, 1850. I'm going to share with you. You decide what you believe. In very little small letters. It says here, Wednesday, April 3rd, 1850. What does it say? It says, the 10 lost tribes of Israel, Major Noah, one of the leading and most intelligent Jews of this country, having been asked to indicate the probable location of the 10 tribes of Israel, submits the following highly interesting views. The subject, always one of deep interest, has occupied researchers of most eminent divines and historians. Many years ago, Boudinot of New Jersey published a work of great interest called The Stars of the West. Some of y'all probably know about that book, in which he attempted to prove that the North American Indians were the descendants of the lost tribes. The work was read and laid aside with incredulity. 40 years, however, have developed many circumstances and discoveries tending to confirm the opinion of Dr. Boudinot, and the work, though out of print, is one which to the curious would repay refusal. We have never doubted the fact 9.5 tribes were carried captive from Samaria, 2.5 of Judah of Benjamin, and half of Manasseh remain in Judea, or in the Transjordan cities, and the latter constitutes the 8 million of the existing nations. All that we know of the route taken is from the second Esdras, an apocryphal book, but one of great antiquity, and one entitled To Respect. The notice runs thus: whereas thou saw another peaceable multitude, these are the tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea, whom Manasseh, king of Assyria, led away captive, and they carried them over the waters, so they came into another land. They took his counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go into a further country where no mankind ever dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And there was a great way to go, namely 1.5 years. The land is called Ashur. This is 2 Ezra 13, verse 40 through 46, I believe, or 45. They marched towards the east of Asia. Some remained in Tartary, and many went into China, where they have been 1,600 years and are numerous in this day. Let me read this to you again. This is some historians agreeing that the 10 tribes of Israel did come here, and several stayed in Tartary, many in China. Okay? Where they have been 1,600 years and are numerous in that day. The main body crossed at Bering Strait, or the Straits of Anian, to our continent, and more hardly keeping to the north, Hudson Bay and Greenland, and more cultivated passed down on the shores of Pacific to California, to Central America and Peru, and there they met with old enemy, the Phoenicians, supposedly, who, having discovered the country 500 years previously, had formed colonies, built the cities of Palenque with pyramids like those they had erected in Egypt, in Cholula, in Tambabo, in Mitlan, and Tezclado, together with the hieroglyphics, zodiac temples, military roads, aqueducts, viaducts, bridges of great beauty existing in this day, proving that they were built and settled there by those who had erected Tyre, Babylon, and Carthage, okay? Now, it says, when the tribes of Israel encountered their old enemies, they fell upon and destroyed them a second time. And when Columbus discovered the country, he found the various tribes of Indians, whose origin was known. These are the missing tribes, and this is the opinion of Adair, Heckwelder, Charlevoix, Mackenzie, Bertram, Smith, Bertrami, Penn, Manasseh, Ben Israel, the Earl of Crawford, Lopez de Gamara, Acosta, Major Long, Malvande, Bodino, and all eminent writers and travelers. We trace the march of the tribes through Asia to this continent. After 800 years, we find the red men of America bearing the strongest mark of Asiatic origin and divided into 300 different nations, remarkable for the intellectual superiority, their bravery in war, their faith in peace, and identify them to be the descendants of the lost tribes by the following religious particulars to all of our Indians and to the Israelites: their belief in one God, and their computation of time by their ceremonies of the new moon, and the division of the year by 4 seasons, and their erection of a temple, having an ark of a covenant, and also an erection of altars, by the division of the nations into tribes, with a chief or a general sachem at their head, by their laws or sacrifices, ablutions, marriages, ceremonies, and war and peace, prohibition of eating certain things, by tradition, history, character, appearance, affinity of their language to the Hebrews, and finally by the everlasting covenant of their heirship, I believe, exhibited in a perpetual transmission of it sealed in the flesh, a custom only of the late relinquished. All the Indians on the American continent, from Labrador to Cape Horn, are the descendants of the tribes which, as Ezra says, went into a further country. Mr. Callan, who lived several years ago among the Indians of the Northwest, assured us that all the Masonic laws traditionary with them were strictly enforced. And William Penn, who had no suspicion of their origin, says, I found them with like countenance of the Hebrew race. I consider these people under a dark night, yet they believe in God and in immortality without the aid of metaphysics. They reckon by moons. They, hold on. They what? Hold on. It's a big page, my bad. They offer their first fruits, or first ripe fruits, or first fruits. They have a kind of feast of tabernacle. They are said to lay their altars with 12 stones. They mourn a year and regard a Mosaic law with regard to the separation. These are the missing but never the lost tribes of Israel. They reside in California. When the ships of Solomon made their 3-year voyage and furnished the gold of Ophir for building the temple, which we know we have maps that show that this was the land of Ophir. They reside there still, the settlers and proprietors of Mexico, Peru, and the whole of America. They had been here centuries before the advent of Christianity and patiently await the promise of redemption. I don't know about the Phoenician being here, though, because that would mean that all tribes would be working together. So, that's where it's like, okay, I don't know. But find it awkwardly odd, as it may be. Napoleon Bonaparte, which I have a book in Spanish, which I translated in English, actually confirms it. The participation of the Jewish discovery of the Americas confirms it. Jews, gods, and history, page 381, confirm it. I hope it was edifying. I am not going long today. I'm going to try to keep these 1 hour long so we can break them down. I have more to show you. Lord willing, sometime this week. Again, we've done part 1, which I wanted to cover the initial part that these people were helped. We got part 2 to make sure that now that we covered thoroughly, like a lot about this particular CULON, right? The next one, we're going to go deeper into the actual apparatus of the bullshit. So anyways, it's, let's see, it's 10:36. Family, I would like to go further, but, like I told you, my daughter has a game tomorrow, and it's early, so I want to be mindful and ready. And I had a long week, and I busted my ass, you know what I mean? And I actually made decent money. Thank God, you know what I'm saying? It's like a little part-time, but this part-time's paying a lot. All right? With all that being said, fam, y'all take care of yourselves. You know what I mean? Seriously. And spend time with your children. Go to the movies. Barbecue, man. Cook some shit out there. Spend some time with your kids. Take care, y'all. See you soon.
los fantasmas del pasado no se detendrán hasta verte derrumbado. Peores lo hemos pasado. Andaba a golpes con la tristeza, me aportó riqueza, me otorgó sabiduría, pues se dibujaba en todas mis piezas. Yo con alegría le daba color después. La aguja sigue girando, tiempo parece burlar de mí. Dijo que sanaría esperando, pero creo que la espina aún sigue ahí. Con los dedos no voy palpando, cierro los puños, escapa de aquí. Agonizando, no me espera el tiempo, no voy a esperar por ti.
Nuestras huellas en la orilla se han borrado por la marea. Si esas estrellas ya no brillan, las entiendo pa' que veas. Sea donde sea, bajo la tormenta o dentro de la odisea, donde arañas cubren el cielo de tela, los aviones nadan y los barcos vuelan. Aunque parezca que va bien, no sabes bien si va mal. Besos que pueden doler, ojos que pueden matar. Tengo mi alma en el almacén encerrada, mi corazón está en huelga, mis sentimientos en ámbar. Gente, Calamala dijo que estaría presente. Fallaron como nunca, se fueron para siempre. Millones razones para vengarme, pero a veces duele más actuar indiferente.
Como no quieren ver ahogados, tenemos branquias y cerrados los bronquios como la mente de un guardia. Yo soy la montaña y vine con la cordillera. Más cojones que tu ganga tiene una madre soltera. Tú cúbrete si suena mi tu. A mí la tengo soldado fumando de su palulu. Ni un conjuro de grimorio me lo salva del velorio. Pa' tener pila valorio se matan vestidos de emporio. Yo no quiero una pistola, estoy soñando que la vida que quería me llega a tiempo. Desde que yo la vi sola, loco ando. Vino a verme cuando el sol se estaba poniendo y se dejó una pluma y se perdió en la bruma. Nunca se despidió de mí, nunca se despidió de mí.
Vivo en un mundo que parece roto y sé que no, porque todo es perfecto y lo debo plasmar. Me fumo un trócolo tras otro y lo veo todo otro color. Me siento libre porque vuelvo a conectar. Mi gente sufre y no lo puedo evitar, más que dándole consejos siempre desde la humildad. Es su camino hacia la fraternidad. Solo puedo que enseñarles a respetar y amar. Con esta bendición, como no voy a aprovechar los códigos que llegan, los tenemos que aceptar. Si me reencarné fue para ayudar y no para malgastar mi tiempo en beneficio del mal. En la unión nace la fuerza y eso nos hace juntar las ganas que siempre tuvimos para iluminar a la gente que se le ocurra y la malla armonizar. Vinimos para dar fuego a la que no nos va a quemar.
Arda y por dentro la llama, no puedo contener la ras. Churruscao el corazón, el armazón no puede llegar a pesarme más. Si abro la boca, tu tumba al suelo, me muelo a diario y sobrado de gas. Escupo risas perfectas, paladas de versos eternos, no mueren jamás. Cuando acabe mi condena, me vi muy solo y perdido. Cada vez más negra la flema, más elegante el problema, pero planté cara a todos mis enemigos. Recuperé las ganas, las fuerzas y el garbo. Dedico requiems a mis diablos, que aquí estoy vivo de milagro. Delicadas flores crecieron entre los cardos. Me dicen vienes más delgado que de costumbre. Será de tanto que he bailado en el alambre, que a tanta pena es mejor no ponerle nombre. Llevamos la música en vena, nuestra sangre.
Hey, original. Canova City on a production key on. Ribby them, ribby boy. Original from the world. Reggae music warrior them. Ay, yeah man. Representando el sonido callejero negro. Respect and love, more love. Hey, pure nigga, respect.
Please. Ya no hay camino que recorra tu pasado, tan solo cicatrices de batallas por ganar. El tiempo dice quién se quedará a tu lado y quién dará la vuelta para nunca regresar. Toda persona tiene su forma de amar, pero pocas con amor y solo queda soñar. Lo que daría por llenar este lugar con el tacto de una flor y la música del mar. Cuánto nada cuesta tanto como tener el cielo entre mis manos y no ver a quién se va. Canto ya sí curó mi llanto, doy gracias a la vida por la familia y que solo de verdad. Tic tac suena el reloj y recuerdo que no debo perder el poco tiempo de ti. Ay, CULON, dispáralo, el resto lo pongo yo. Puro sonido de alegría en el blog. Ey, tic tac suena el reloj y recuerdo que no debo perder el poco tiempo de ti. Ay, CULON, dispáralo, el resto lo pongo yo. Puro sonido de alegría en el blog. Ey, Seishan, I call it with a connection, them. Original reggae music, CULON Studio President. Hey. Háblame de amor, pensamiento que no tienes, mujer, y eso solo lo sé yo, que no me diste ni un día de placer. Y pide, muévelo, 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 el sonido en la party, tremendo champion. Y dice, muévelo, 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 original Abon. Y dice, voy navegando por el mundo, dame solo un segundo y te muestro quién soy. El mensaje más profundo, con el papel me fundo y chillo root boy. Caminando por el mundo, dame solo un segundo y te muestro quién soy, boy. Reggae music dancer, oh, them, call it with zone, call it with them, call it with forever, CULON for president, warrior, original of them. Hey, y dice, ¿cómo voy navegando por el mundo? Dame solo un segundo y te muestro quién soy. El mensaje más profundo, con el papel me fundo y chillo root boy. Caminando por el mundo, dame solo un segundo y te muestro quién soy. El mensaje más profundo de Call with them, original fire, fire music warrior. CULON Studio original, them, original, please.
Y Cal, hijo, abre los ojos. Tu cuerpo se queda con nosotros, pero tu espíritu debe seguir. Busca la luz. Aléjate de las sombras. Deja que nuestro dolor sea tu fuerza. Desde aquí iluminamos tu camino. Lucha como nosotros ante esta pena tan grande. Yo soy tú. Tú eres yo. La muerte que hoy nos separa, mañana volverá a unirnos. Eres libre, hijo.